Welcome or welcome back to day 50 of our chess journey to 1500 ELO on chess.com. Now, for the last 15 days, I've had a diamond membership because I got gifted it from a staff member because of a bug I encountered unrelated to the video I previously made. So I have been grinding a lot of puzzles recently, and also I've been working now on this, which is Chessbook. I've been reviewing all the moves I added so far today. I haven't completed my repertoire so far, but I have gone through about 130 moves so far, and I'm feeling like this is going to be a massive help in my learning process, and I think it's going to speed up our openings a whole lot. At least I'm hoping so. I haven't been able to add all the openings yet or all the lines, but I think we should probably get a few more much quicker openings in the coming days and weeks. So anyways, let's jump on ahead into a game today and find an opponent. I just wanted to give you all an update on our halfway journey to 100 today, and regarding where we are currently at. We will be playing 1d4 as per usual, and we'll go into the Queen's Gambit. Now here, both of those moves here work. I want to experiment a bit with knight to c3. We get this move. And honestly, I have not quite looked at this response, but as far as I'm aware, it's a bit inaccurate because you don't want this knight in front of your c-pawn, as far as I'm aware. Well, let's have a quick look here. We have a few options. I might just blitz out a few moves, or I might have, but instead I might want to think a bit here because this is not something I've been looking at. This makes sense. This makes sense. There might be an argument for g3 playing in a Catalan style, or we might play e3, but that's going to block in our bishop. So instead here I think we might be looking for this move and then playing e3, which might place us in more of a London-esque position. What I have been looking at has mostly been stuff in the main line, where we go like this, get our bishop up here, etc. But now it seems like we are in a different setup. Queen to c2 is good here as far as I'm aware. If they take, we don't have to double our pawns. Or potentially we could just play into their move here and play knight to f3. This looks like a doubling of our pawns, but at the same time I don't quite think it is, because this is always going to get traded off at some point. So we might even look at e3, so this pawn does not sorry, so we don't risk losing the pawn, because honestly there are some lines where black can capture and maintain the pawn advantage, and I'm not quite sure as to how that would look in this particular line, because this knight move introduces some nuances here, but I think it should not help our opponent if they want to capture, because then they can't play this typical c6 response. Well, we get this move. We can develop here. I don't quite think we would like this. Now, is there an argument here for going in here? How would our opponent defend this? The only way I'm seeing is with this bishop. But then we might just ask our opponent what they're going to do with the bishop straight away here by playing a3. Because this would trap their bishop, so they're likely to capture ours, or our knight rather. So yeah, because we can always trade here, I think it doesn't matter if we trade like this. This is probably, as I mentioned, a blunder. They don't play it. And now I think we want to finish our kingside development. We get this knight move here. We can't really move in. I would have wanted to induce some weaknesses here, but this is a well-controlled square by our opponent, so I think we just want to fall back here. This is the only safe square. So I think our opponent currently has a quite atypical position in a Queen's Gambit decline here. This knight is not typically here, and this knight often resides on f6. This, is it a threat or is it not? We might as well play h3, because I'm expecting h4 here. And I'm not seeing any good alternatives here to pushing this pawn. We might be able to play h4, but I think that's, on the one hand it grabs space, but this knight might try to hit at it, so I would like to go here instead, so they don't team up like this. So which moves could we have here now? We can always still take. I might consider taking here and then moving our bishop. I don't think we want our knight here. I'm not seeing any good remaneuvering squares. This h-pawn is pushed, so let's just jump back here. And now we can potentially target this pawn long term. Now this pawn push here might be possible. But our opponent does not go for it. And now I'm actually curious here. I was going to ask whether we have this idea of applying pressure, but I don't quite like what I am seeing here after this pawn push. However, we might be able to go in here and then come in like this. But is this going to work? It's a bit adventurous of a plan prior to moving, I think, or prior to castling. And this is defended twice. So instead, this might just be our plan. We'll start with the knight, I think. Now this is not a move because we have 3 defenders, and they only control the square 3 times. This knight is luckily not in the game yet. It doesn't do a whole lot here on those squares, but this might be a remaneuvering idea, or they might try to apply pressure like this. Now if I was playing as our opponent, let's have a look here. What does this move accomplish? Well, it connects the rook eventually, or the rooks rather. It takes away this potentially retreating square from the knights, but it allows our opponent to play along this diagonal. Well, they can't really go up here, so I'm not seeing a threat. Let's develop our bishop, I think. We might look for a developing plan like this even. We just have to make sure we don't hang this. But now there might be an argument for playing like this. But is that a good argument? That's the question. This might become a target because this pawn can't quite get pushed because of the knight. I was going to say this might be a move, but it would probably be a move after this trade at least. I think I like this. It removes a weakness as well from us. So let's go for it. This pawn is currently undefended, but I don't want to grab it too quickly. Now this is not an option because of this pawn, so I think we can go up to this square instead. I don't quite like this move. I think it's a bit overcommittal, and I think this diagonal here has more long-term prospects. Just want to make sure we don't have any ideas here. For example, I am looking at this pawn, but it's currently defended by their queen. So let's go like this and see what our opponent does. They might try to go for some kind of kingside attack here, but this would weaken the king a whole lot. Now this backwards pawn is not all that fun to play with, but we could turn it into an asset at some point perhaps. This might be an outpost. We might see this. I'm not seeing a whole lot of moves for this bishop. So what else could our opponent play? This doesn't work, so this knight here doesn't have anything at all. This pawn takes away this square as well. So we have this, a pawn move, potentially a bishop move, or they might move the rooks. We get this, but as far as I'm aware, this simply drops a pawn. This does line up here with this bishop, but what is our opponent really targeting? They are not going to sack their queen for this, I'm sure. So here is there a good response for our opponent? I'm not seeing a convincing response. So this is good for us, I think. It might open up this file, so this might become more of a weakness long term. But I'm not seeing why we should say no to a free pawn still. We still have the option of castling at some point, but it's not an urgent decision, I think, as our opponent doesn't have any immediate push that allows them to threaten our king. I was briefly looking at this move, but I'm not seeing a good follow-up. And I was also looking to see if this bishop could get trapped, but there is no pawn move that could trap it in any direction. So now we might just go back if they target our bishop. We might look at castling. This file looks somewhat juicy. We might play with this pawn to get rid of this. But this is an isolated pawn now. It can't get supported now because of this pawn being lost. So our long-term plan here might be to target this pawn. Although there might be an argument for getting rid of it like this because we trade weaknesses. because our c3 pawn might become a massive weakness, simply because our opponent can stack rooks against it now. So I'm still not seeing a lot of ideas for our opponent. They made a couple of somewhat inefficient queen moves, I think. I'm not seeing what they think the queen will accomplish on e6 here. It doesn't have a lot of support. Now this move is interesting to me. They seek to open up the center of the board here. But we are able to castle in time, I think. So it shouldn't be a massive issue to us. But let's have a quick look here still. This would lose to this fork. I think we should probably castle and then bring our bishop back. And then when we get this, I think we might trade, and our opponent will have a lot of pieces staring down at us, but we do have a lot of defenders as well, with all our pieces here. We don't want to allow this while our king is in the center, because we want to be able to retake, I'm pretty sure. And now it's important to note, if we get this, we might get their knight off the board here, and all the pieces we trade should favor us because our opponent's king is weak and we are up material. And if we get this, we can get this as well perhaps. Like this, and hit their queen. I don't think we have to touch our bishop yet, because it's not currently under attack. But I think we should come back along this diagonal, because we probably need the bishop in a defensive position against this incoming attack. This or this, if it's even possible at the time, it depends on this knight positioning probably, is not going to be good, because then we lose a defender, and this diagonal here looks quite juicy as well. Now there is this diagonal as well. If this pawn wasn't here, we could have ideas of pinning the queen, but that's probably not happening. Well, this is probably happening though. This does seem quite interesting to me. Let's calculate this. We still have a lot of time. This, and we get this pawn and hit the queen. There is no move that forks our bishop and knight here, I think. So we might just come back perhaps. But let's say we get this supporting the pawn push and hitting our bishop. Then we could actually take here. The queen has to stay defending this pawn. I think I like this idea here. Let's go for it. Now this should open up our queen as well. So it should make our defensive task a bit easier potentially. I'm pretty sure this seems to be a good move. There might be this response. But honestly, now we can't quite take there. Now this runs into this. The queen has to defend the pawn, I think. And even here we can take this pawn. Yeah, I think this is probably best, taking this pawn first. As this does look like a free pawn, and now they can't threaten our structure. However, this would allow for this capture because we are pinned. Which is why I'm considering this instead. So let's capture here. It's important their queen can't get onto e7, because then they could fork us. But there should be no other square that they could do so from. Now if they go here, we go back as I mentioned, and then we can look at this. We don't want to lose this pawn, so we might even look at king to h1 at some point. So this here is not a threat. Let's go back, and then we capture this pawn. At least I'm pretty sure that's our idea in this position. This loses the knight, so let's not go for that. So we just have to make sure us taking those pawns here doesn't lose us the game, because it does open up potential attacks for our opponent, but at the same time their king is also getting a lot weaker. If we get this, I'm not quite sure as to what the best response is. We could dodge this. Or do we have a threat? I don't quite want this to open up. I'm liking this idea though, because after this move their queen can't stay on this file, which means we can probably take this pawn safely. Yeah, this is looking like an interesting move, so I'll go on ahead and play it. This is controlled here. This doesn't work. This loses. So I think wherever the queen goes, we take like this, and then we should be pretty happy with our position. And if we do trade queens, I think this should favor us a whole lot, because we are up material, and it should simplify our tactical position here. There won't be as many threats, because our opponent's queen can't generate an attack anymore if it's captured. So I'm quite happy with our game so far, but I'm still curious as to how it's going to end up. This bishop can't quite get targeted because we are going to capture here, so it doesn't interfere with our plan. Could they move like this? No, this doesn't work. I was considering options here for our opponent, moving on over to the other side of the board and trying to hit our weaknesses with the queen, but this knight is in the way, and so is our bishop. So I'm honestly finding it quite difficult to find moves for our opponent here. But this might be an idea. I saw this move just now. However, in response to this, we might have this knight move. And we could get a position like this. So I don't think that's going to be fatal, although it does look a bit scary at first glance, because it threatens this and this. I would have liked having this square instead of this, but the knight covers it. So this is most likely the better option. But let's have a look here, because if we do go here, this does actually lose a piece. So we are actually forked still. Now, so we are going to lose this pawn, which is not ideal. Can we pick this pawn up in the process? Our opponent can't move a rook onto b8 here. So if we take, they go here. And we go back here, then we get checkmated. Could we play this? No, we do have to move our queen. This. Honestly, this is looking much worse than I initially thought it might be. But we have to move our queen. So let's start out with that. And now we have to find a way of dealing with this mating threat, which I'm guessing is this move. But what happens here, here, and if our opponent simply plays this, then our knight is hanging. And that does seem a bit awkward, is my go-to word here. But we could go back if they take the knight. We can take their knight, and probably this bishop might play an important defensive role. This might be a check here, and an option for us. What happens if we see this? Then we take here. So the only move I'm seeing here that doesn't lose immediately is probably going to be this. So we do have to play this if we see this move. I just have to make sure here we don't have any alternatives. This might be a move, but it doesn't quite convince me as much as this does. In this line here. This move, however, I think this is a mistake. Because now we can move here, and we don't have to lose our pawns. This seems like a fake threat to me. We move here, and this pawn is likely to get lost. But if we move here, we see this, but this I think is good for us because it opens up our rook. Yeah, let's go back here. I'm quite happy with this. If they take like this looks quite interesting as well. Our queen still can't get hit because of our bishop. Our opponent captures here. Yeah, I'm not convinced. They might try to lift the rook, but now we can always go back, and this looks like a pretty solid defense. What does this move do? It threatens this pawn. If we go up and prepare this, what does our opponent do? Here, this still loses this rook, so I'm pretty sure we can just play up here, and this looks quite good. This capture is still a possibility, but after this they lose a piece. And if we get rook to g1 here, then a bishop move, regardless of where it moves, is going to reveal a checkmating threat. Just want to make sure this is our best option, because there might be an argument for pinning the pawn. But I don't think we need to be fancy if we don't have to. Let's take, and our opponent can't really take, I think. At least I'm not seeing how this works out for them. This is a blunder. Now this, and we go back here and come back to defend. So we are up 5 points of material, but the game is not over yet. This might actually be a move. I'm curious as to whether it's better or not than this move. It depends on which diagonal we want to use. And I think this is actually better, because we get more direct access to our king. However, let's have a quick look here. Yeah, I think this is okay. I was looking at if we get hit here and knocked away from this knight, then this might get attacked. But if we do get attacked, we can defend the pawn straight away. So this is no longer hanging. And now we can look to trade down material. And as I mentioned, all trades should favor us. Now this is a move I didn't consider, this is a quite good move. I think we have to go back here, because this is a checkmate. We can't block, so this should be forced. Our opponent will go here. Now they check us on this square. Now this is forced. We have no alternatives, and we are going to get checkmated. This doesn't work, so this is a great comeback by our opponent and a checkmate that I missed. I did not see this pattern. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything, but as far as I'm aware, I'm not currently seeing any defensive resources. We can't intercept. So we are going to see this, and then this is checkmate in one move. Well played to our opponent. This was a great attack. Now I see we made 3 mistakes and 3 blunders, so let's jump on into the game review and see how we should have played differently. Well played to you, ATL Dogs from the US. So this was quite low in terms of accuracy for us. We played with 65.8 and our opponent played with 82.5. Let's just make sure we have everything turned on here, and then we get into the moves. We had this pretty normal opening. This was a slight mistake by our opponent, and this was all good for us. Queen to c2 was apparently best here. We did look at the move, but we decided to play this instead. We went back. This was all good. In this position, we should have apparently played here, which I did mention this move, but I wasn't quite convinced because we were so far from getting castled, and I didn't see a concise follow-up, because this pawn is defended, so what are we actually hitting on this square? Was my thought process at least, but let's have a look here. If we go in here, knight to b8. Yeah, I don't know why knight to b8 is the best move. Let's say they play this, for example. What is our threat? Here, but we still don't threaten a capture, I think. Rook to e8. Let's say they played this move. Oh yeah, this is our threat. Okay, I missed this idea. I was simply just going for a checkmate, it seems. And then the best move is capturing on c7, because our opponent has to move away from the defense because of this attack. Well, I didn't see this, and I'm honestly still not seeing a concise follow-up, because even if our opponent plays, say, bishop to a6 here, this doesn't really do a whole lot because they escape. So what other moves do we have? Bishop to d3, and I guess we just apply more pressure. Well, when we see all the moves in this line, it does make a bit more sense. We played like this, but we did still have a great advantage. This was crushing for us, but why? Well, never mind, this is not the correct move. Knight to g5 was the move. If they went here, oh, we had this threat again, and they would have had to sack the queen perhaps, or try to escape like this, and then we would have had queen to h5 going back. I'm honestly not sure why this is that good. We are not up material, but let me go on ahead and follow the line for a second here. Well, obviously this would be a draw, so which other moves do we have? This bizarre move even. Now this is not something I would have spotted, I think. I don't quite see why it's so good even. I guess we have well-positioned attackers, but we don't have a concise follow-up, I think. Well, either way, this was how we played, which was still a pretty decent advantage for us. It seems like what actually dropped our accuracy in this game was our continued miss of this move. This idea here was available for a long time, but we simply did not play it. But here, yeah, this was apparently decisively lost for our opponent. This should still be the follow-up. I'm trying to follow the line here. Let's say this is played. No, they can't go here. So yeah, this is not all that good for them. And then we take this knight, and then we can go in. This is mate in one because of our knight. That would have been an interesting idea. I'm honestly not that accustomed to attacking like this, so I do have to... Honestly, I have to do a lot of puzzles like this, or try to play some games where I'm in a more heavy attacking position here, because I didn't even consider this, because typically speaking I simply look at small advantages and a gradual win. Well, we did still have a good position, but here we should have yeah, this was not good. Should have went for this, I guess, which was the other move we did look at, and this we should have been unafraid of. I didn't see this, to be honest. It wasn't as decisively winning as this, but it would have been an easy way of breaking their threat, and then they can no longer utilize this idea. I thought this was a good move, but I missed this. Did see it in hindsight though, prior to them playing the move, but this was still okay for us. I guess I misevaluated this a bit as well, thinking this trade wasn't bad for us, but apparently this was not ideal. I'm guessing our opponent saw this all the way back here, which is probably why they sacked the rook, or they might have accidentally stumbled into this, because they did pause for a long while after we recaptured. Yeah, we should have sacked our queen because of this idea here, which I simply missed. Which, I mean, it's unfortunate, but that kind of stuff happens. Either way, I think we had a pretty good early and middle game, apart from missing the idea of attacking with the queen and rook here, or queen and knight rather. Well, anyways guys, that's our game for today. Thanks a lot for watching, and I hope to see you all tomorrow. Bye bye!